Hi everyone, welcome back to Easy Tender training session video on columns. So we'll be doing some column exercises or some examples on Civil Wizard for rectangular isolated columns. So to do that, after assigning the project locations and assign the concrete chapter into the wizard, we can start with the Civil Wizard superstructure work. So, in Civil Wizard, we have Superstructure Reinforced Concrete Wizard. Once you click on that, you'll get the Reinforced Concrete Wizards. The item selection in the group, these are the different elements in superstructure. So if you click on the drop-down arrow, you'll get columns, walls, beams, slabs, and staircase. For today's example, we'll be doing on columns, so I'll just click on columns. And then you have, this is the default items that you need to choose for your outputs. For example, it says here, include formwork calculations. Whether or not would you like to present that in the outputs? If yes, keep the tick over there. If no, unclick that. Next, you have the concrete section name. There is a substructure cast in situ concrete, superstructure cast in situ concrete, and miscellaneous. So we'll go for superstructure cast in situ concrete. And for the formwork section name, this is substructure cast in situ concrete. Again, we need to choose the superstructure. So there is substructure formwork, superstructure formwork, and this is what's related to our example for today. So we choose that. Again, we have concrete item name, concrete for sheet walls for all thicknesses. Instead, you'll click on the drop-down arrow. We need to choose concrete for isolated rectangular columns. So you have different examples over there like core walls, walls for swimming pools, and so on. So concrete for isolated rectangular columns, I'll choose that. And the formwork item name for the same. If you click on the drop-down arrow, you need to choose formwork for isolated rectangular columns in case you have regular rectangular columns. In case you have circular columns, then you need to choose formwork for isolated circular columns. So since we have rectangular columns as an example for today, we'll go for formwork for isolated rectangular columns. Once you're done with this, you have the shape selection for your columns, whether it's rectangular or circular. My example for today is rectangular columns, so we click on that. And now you get the input data entry for your columns. So this is rectangular columns reinforced concrete wizard. Please be aware, you need to choose the reference location, which project you'll be working on. So parts always refer to which sub-project. Remember from the first videos, we assigned two buildings and the main project itself as an example. So we'll work on the project and the levels. This refers to which floor you'll be working on as a start. So these are the different floors that we have assigned at the very beginning. So we'll start with ground floor as an example. So you need to choose ground floor. Later on, I'll show you how if you have typical floors and you wish to copy all the column details to other floors, you can do that. Next, you have number of column types. In the case you have 1, 2, or more than that, you can choose the column types from here. Please notice if I choose, for example, 6 columns, as for my example for today, all the data rows in here will be open for me. Next, you have the default frame stirrups diameter. In case you have common diameter stirrups for all your columns, then you can choose the default diameter so that you don't need to type 10 millimeters for all of the 6 columns. The steel cover in centimeters, you need to input that as well. The overlap vertical factor, you need to put it in dia. So in our case, we're using 50 diameter. Next, you have include link stirrups. Whether or not would you like to include link stirrups? In case you do, keep it there. In case not, please unclick that. Default link stirrups in millimeters. Again, in case you have common stirrup links similar size for all of them, this would reduce the time of putting all the diameters for each column. So in case you do have a common thing for all of them, just input the diameter over there. The spaces of stirrups, again, if you have common spaces of stirrups in meters, please input that. In case you have more than one extra stirrups for top and bottom, you can also input this. Next, EasyTender offers you some basic notes on how the software calculates the concrete and steel. So you've got 3 notes under the column section. It says column height is the clear height. That means top of concrete for lower slab of the selected location to the bottom of the concrete of the ceiling slab. Note number 2, in case of the beams attached to slab, the common concrete between the beams and the columns is actually calculated within the columns itself. This is for your information to know exactly how the software calculates what and where. Note number 3, overlap length affected by the selected location, columns, bar diameter. Now you can start with inputting the data entry for all your 6 columns for my example for today. I'll just explain to you briefly what each of these columns represent, and we'll do a basic example for these 6 columns. Concrete element parameters. This is the details of the dimensions for each column. So this is the length, this is the width. The height in meters, this was taken from the initial setup that we have done at the very beginning. For each floor, we put their relative heights, and this is where the height was taken. N basically represents the number of columns 1. So if you've got more than one column type 1, you can input here. Next is the steel reinforcement parameters. You've got the main vertical steel inputs and the stirrups. Basically, V1, this is the diameter. This is the diameter for the main steel. You need to input the numbers, how many numbers of the main steel, the vertical steel. V2 represents any extra vertical steel. In case you don't have extra, then you keep N as the number 0. Stirrups, this is the main frame diameter. When you click on the drop-down arrow, you've got several options for the different diameters. Adds in meters is the spacing of the frame. Next is the link. This is the diameter for the links. And again, this is the spacing for the links. In case you have extra, you can also input them. So let's start with our example on the relative drawing. So this is our example for today. We'll start with ground level. You've got columns C1 up to C6. So let's start inputting the first column details. We'll put the length as 1, be careful it's in meters, and the width as 0.3. The main vertical steel is 18 numbers, 20 dia. So we keep it as 1, for the width we put 0.3, and then we just keep the height the same. And it depends on how many numbers of column types 1 in a ground floor. In case you have more than one, again, you can type it simply. I'll just keep it for now for our example. Vertical steel, you've got 20 dia, 18 numbers, so I'll choose 18 and 20 here and 18 numbers. If you have any extra vertical steel, please input that. For our case, C1 has no extra vertical steel, so I'll keep this as 0. Again, go for next for C2. You do exactly the same steps. So it's 1 meters by 0.3. So if you click on the drop down arrow, you can simply take all the details below without retyping them again. So click the down arrow if you want to include 0.3 for all of them, and then you can change them later on. So C2, the main vertical steel, is 25 dia, 18 numbers. So I'll change here into 25 dia, again 18 numbers. I don't have any vertical steel extra, so I'll just keep this as 0. You do exact the same steps for all column types. So for C3, it's the same dimensions except that we have the width of 0.35. So we keep it as 1 and 0.35. You keep the height the same. In case it's different, please input the height. And then for N, again the number of type of C3 columns. For vertical steel, the main vertical steel is 25 dia, 22 numbers. So I'll put 25 dia, 22 numbers. I have no vertical steel, so I'll just keep it as it is. For C4, it's 1 by 0.3. I'll keep it the same. And I'll go directly to the vertical steel. It's 20 dia, 20 numbers. C5, it's 1 by 0.35, so I'll change this into 0.35. The height, the numbers, vertical steel. So vertical steel is 25 dia, 18 numbers. And finally for C6, it's 1.2 meters by 0.35. So 1.2 meters by 0.35. We'll go to vertical steel. We've got two steel types. The main steel is 32 dia, 14 numbers, so I'll need to choose 32 dia, 14 numbers. For the extra steel as 25 dia, 10 numbers, as it shows here. For the stirrups and the links, for our drawing in this case, we have all column links to be T10 at 0.15 spacing. So for the links, I'll put it as 10 and 0.15 spacing. Because it's the same for all of them, I click on the drop down arrow and it will be copied exactly the same. Same thing for the links, it's 10 and I'll click on the drop down arrow, they will change it to 10. Or initially you can place it here, change 8 to 10. Both ways will work. Since we're done, you click on Insert and Finish, only to display the outputs for ground floor. However, if you wish to continue for the other floors, you need to click on Insert and select New Location. Please notice the software will take you from ground floor to the next one. So if I select Insert and select New Location, you need to click on Yes. Okay, please notice it took us to mezzanine 1, and all the information from ground floor is taken to mezzanine 1. In case you have identical floors, you can use them. In case not, you need to change. I'll assume that we're done for all floors, so you simply click on Insert and Finish. And then you need to click on Yes to continue all the calculations. Now, this is the final screen of the software. It will display for you the calculation sheet for current item elements. Please notice where exactly the outputs are being displayed for. Part, this is our project. Level, this is mezzanine 1. So you can go to ground floor and check the outputs. So this is ground floor and these are the outputs for ground floor. This is the concrete chapter and we're doing superstructure works. And if you notice on this side, it is concrete for isolated rectangular columns, the unit in cubic meters. So basically you've got every column is displayed on this side. And also the software shows you the equation parameters. It means how the software has calculated the concrete for each of these columns. So if you click on this, it'll show you the shape and the different dimensions over there that we have input initially. And then calculate, it is there. So the quantity for column 1 is 1.05 cubic meters. The same for column 2, this is for column 3, and this is a sum for all columns. In case you have irregular shapes, you can check on equation parameters when you simply click on the equation itself, and then you've got an option of equations and shapes. If you click on that, it shows you all different types of irregular shapes. In case it's not rectangular, you can select one of these following options. For our case, they're just regular shapes, so I'll keep them as it is. Next, from the same page, again, if you wish to see the mezzanine floor details, these are the mezzanine floor details. If you want to display the reinforcement parameters, you need to click on Reinforcement Calculations. I'll take you and shows you the steel bars towards mezzanine floor. So, if you click on Reinforcement Calculations, it'll take us to the final screen for the breakdown of the steel. In this section, you've got item breakdown parameters. It shows you all 6 columns and per column the steel ratio. So you've got for C1 250.78 kilograms per unit, for C2 the same up to C6. And please notice if you click on C1, all the item breakdown reinforcement schedule is shown in there. So for C1 you've got all these 4 parameters: the main vertical steel, rectangular mainframe stirrup, the triangular shape for short direction, and rectangular shape for short direction. And these are the diameters that we have inputted. And you've got the final weight for each one of them. You can also see the shape of these steel bars by clicking on the number here under the length. So this is the main vertical steel. And for the rectangular mainframe stirrup, if you click on here, it'll show you the shape code. In case you have customized steel shape bars, please input again from the same icon here, equations and shapes. So if you click on that, it'll show you different shape codes that you can choose from. Otherwise, the software selects for you the default shape, which is this. Clicking on it again, the software has chosen this, and directly it has calculated the number of bars of this shape. And the last option, rectangular short direction for C1, if you click on it, this is the shape code that is selected by the software, and the number of bars are calculated. If you want to display for C2, exactly the same. For C3, exactly the same, and so on for the rest of them. Beware, these are the steel bars for the columns and mezzanine floor. In case you want to display for ground floor, you can do so. So this is the basic or main features that EasyTender offers. You can display the breakdowns per element, means per column type, and per geographic location of your project, means per floor. So this is the steel ratio for this breakdown. It's 274.84 kilograms per unit, and this is the sum of the weights. If you want to go back, you can either go back to the quantity surveying screen or go back to the main screen. So if you click on that, back to the quantity surveying screen, it'll take you to the concrete parameters, the concrete outputs. If you want to go back to the main screen of the software, you can simply click on back to main screen. Now these outputs, they're being shown in the reports. So once we're done with the input data entry and we've seen the breakdowns for the steel and the concrete, you can display these outputs in BOQ format under the report section. So you've got more than 10 reporting solutions. You can display as per your requirements or needs. I can show you an example on how to display the different parameters in 2 or 3 different reports. To do that, click again on Reports. We'll try the first option for today's reporting solutions is for the custom location done by EasyTender. So click on that. You'll get an option to filter your inputs or outputs in the report. So this exactly gives you the opportunity to display the different outputs for different floors. So because we've worked on 2 floors so far, so this is what it's displayed, you can control hiding or displaying the outputs for which floor. Once you're done, click on Next and View. Now we've got here the superstructure cast in situ concrete for isolated rectangular columns, and this is the quantity and the unit as 15 cubic meters. And then the formwork for the isolated rectangular columns as 122 square meters. This is, bear in mind, the cumulative output for all the floors that we have chosen. In case you want to display the outputs per floor or to see the values as a breakdown for each floor, you need to choose another reporting solution. So we'll go back and I'll show you how to input the details per floor. You can click on reports and then go for summary for item location quantities. So it's per location, per floor. So once you click on that, it'll give you an option to choose what chapters in case you've worked on more than just one chapter. And then click on next and then view. So in this section, you'll be getting exactly the different parameters per floor. So we'll start here, concrete for isolated rectangular columns. For ground floor, the quantity is 707, and for mezzanine, it's 8.08. The cumulative, 15.15 for both floors. So these are the outputs per floor and per element. In case you want to filter, you have a data filtering option. So you select which project. We've only worked on one so far, so we'll just click on the project. And then which levels. If you want to display only ground floor, so you can do that. And then all selected chapters, we've only done concrete work. And then all selected sections, in case you've worked on more than one section or you want to display formwork separate from the concrete, you can also do that. And then all selected items, just keep it as it is. Click on apply. You'll notice that only ground floor will be displayed. So I'll click on apply. And here we go. You've only got the options for ground floor. The outputs for only ground floor. Let us try another reporting solution. Bear in mind, you can export the report to PDF and save it. And you can print. One of the main reporting solutions that I can show you is you've got the full project state report and the bar bending schedule. So we'll go for the project state report as a start. And again, you can filter the output to be displayed in the report. Next, these are the basic formats, let me say, for pages and headers. You can always put the main header for your company. And in case you want to show the logo in all pages, you can do that. View. So this is the project state report for our project that we have named test video. Once more, you can always change the logo and put your company logo in there. So in order to use your report as final, because it comes in BOQ format. So bear in mind, the locations, this is for all locations, means all floors. The diameters, these are all the diameters displayed. So the diameter in mm, 10, 20, 25 and 32, these are the ones that we have used so far in the columns. The pieces numbers, the total length in meters, and it also shows you the number of 12 meter bars, the standard length bars, and the total weight required per diameter. Now, since this is a project state report, you can filter the elements using the project. Selected levels, it means which floor, in case you want to select an item in ground floor, for example. All selected items, in case you've worked on more than one superstructure, like columns, beams, slabs, you can filter the same. Since we only worked on columns, so this displays concrete for isolated rectangular columns. And if you want to filter a certain diameter, you can also do that. Otherwise, if I want to display all diameters in ground floor for columns, you click on apply and it comes here again. Location, instead of all levels, it's only ground floor. And the item, it's concrete for isolated rectangular columns. So these are the diameter outputs that are there for isolated rectangular columns. Again, you can export the reports to PDF and you can print them as well. The main other reporting solution is the bar bending schedule. So click on bar bending for check and approval purposes in order to check the shapes of the steel bars used for each element. Once more, you can select the floor that you wish to display. Okay, so we'll click on view, and there we get the bar bending schedule. So for every isolated rectangular columns, we've got C1, C2 up to C6. For every column, you'll get all the different breakdowns for the steel plus their shapes. So for the vertical main steel, for the rectangular main frame stirrup, and so on. So this is the end of this training session video. Thanks for watching.